Hi, everyone. Welcome to Faces of Future Ready, our show where we invite disruptive thinkers and leaders who are shaping the future of finance, technology, and leadership. I'm Joseph Voss, and I'll be hosting today. We're pleased to have a very special guest, someone who revolutionized the way we discover music. Joining us is Chris Barton, the founder of Shazam, an app that turned a simple idea into a global phenomenon. Shazam wasn't just an app, it was a breakthrough in audio recognition built before smartphones even existed. Chris and his team defied the odds, creating technology that could identify songs from a few seconds of audio, something that most thought was impossible at the time. From startup struggles to an acquisition by Apple, his journey is a masterclass in persistence, innovation, and thinking differently. Beyond Shazam, Chris is a serial entrepreneur, speaker, and startup advisor, sharing insights on creativity, resilience, and the future of tech. He's also passionate about the power of bold ideas, showing how unconventional thinking can lead to groundbreaking success. Chris's story is packed with lessons on innovation, problem solving, and never taking no for an answer. We're excited to dive into his journey, the early days of Shazam, and what he sees as the next wave of transformative technology. So let's get started. Chris, welcome to the Faces of Future Ready.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
We appreciate you being here. I know lots of folks are interested in hearing the story. So just starting at the beginning, I think what may be interesting to folks is, what was your aha moment? When did you think about the idea of taking technology to recognize music, and how you prove that out?
Yeah, it was quite a while back. It was actually in 1999, imagine, 1999. And mobile phones were pretty basic back then. I remember popular models would be Nokia, Ericsson, and so on. And they were certainly not smartphones. They had just little screens, black and white screens with, I think, about 70 by 90 monochrome pixels. And people really just used phones to make phone calls and send text messages. There were no apps. So my aha moment, actually, often people think it was a moment of, hey, we need to help people identify music when they hear it. What's that song? Kind of, people often think that was the aha moment of, hey, what's that song, kind of thing. But it was really only part one of the aha moment. My original idea was, hey, wouldn't it be great to figure out what's that song using a mobile phone? But my original idea was to do it for only songs that were played on the radio, because there were technologies that monitored hundreds and even thousands of radio stations. And so my original idea was to build from this existing technology that monitored radio stations for the purposes of distributing royalties, and then create a service where you could dial a phone number, believe it or not, because there were no apps, dial a phone number and then type in the radio station number that you were listening to, and it would tell you what song is playing by being connected in real time to this radio monitoring service. And what I'm describing just there is actually what 6 companies did do. Imagine, they actually did pursue that. They did raise venture capital and build that business, radio recognition. All those companies are defunct now. And so that was my original idea. And so the true aha moment with Shazam was, I was actually, at that point, I was doing my MBA at Berkeley, but I was doing a semester abroad in London, at London Business School. England is where we actually started Shazam. And so I was laying in bed in my flat in Notting Hill, and I was thinking about this radio recognition business that I really wanted to build and create. And then I thought to myself, if we did do this, what could someone do that might leapfrog me, leapfrog this business and make us irrelevant?
Right.
It's actually a great way to think, really, for any leader in any organization. What could someone do that would sort of make your entire product, your entire business, sort of irrelevant, that would leapfrog you? And I was thinking about that, and that's what really pushed me to the next level, to think beyond what was technically possible at the time. And I suddenly thought, gosh, wait, what if you don't even need to know what's playing on the radio at all? You didn't need that information. What if you could just do it from the sound in the air coming to the microphone of the phone, even though there's background noises, and there can be a lot of background noise. And that was not possible at the time. There was no technology we discovered that could do that, and no one that even knew how to invent it. But I remember just being determined, wow, if we could do that, if we could do it from just the sound in the air, regardless of the background noise, if we could solve that technical problem and invent a solution to solve that, then wow, what an experience that would be, because you wouldn't have to go through this clunky experience of typing the radio station number in. And then also, you wouldn't have to know the radio station number, clearly, if it is the radio. And then even bigger, wow, you'd be able to use it if it's not the radio that you're hearing. So, many times when you're in a bar, a club, a movie theater, watching TV, and you hear music, that's not radio. So it would work with all those situations as well. And so I just thought, wow, so you work everywhere. You wouldn't have to type in the radio station number. You wouldn't have to know it. And it would just identify it. And I knew it would be a very challenging technical thing to do. And we discovered that it was actually impossible. No one knew how to do it. But I was just absolutely determined that we've got to find a way to invent this, because this would really open up an incredible opportunity.
Well, that's interesting. You're mentioning a few factors that I think people will find interesting. One is thinking beyond. Let's start moving several steps down the road, because not enough people think far enough ahead. But maybe most importantly, in the line of your point right now, is how do you go from it's impossible to finding some way to make it possible? I think that's probably the one of the biggest pieces of the story, at least for some folks, is everyone told you it can't be done. So how do you find out a way to make it happen?
Yeah, that's it's a difficult thing to do. It's a scary thing to do, because it's not defined. I mean, if you think about it, like when the Snapchat founder came up with the Snapchat, or even Zuckerberg with Facebook, they're essentially, they have a vision for what they want to create, but they're just building it. It's really software engineering, so they're sort of coding up this thing, and there's a bit of time involved. But when you're truly actually inventing something that just everyone's telling you is impossible, it's a bit scary, because you're not really sure if it's going to even be feasible at all, let alone how long it will take and how much it will cost. It can be a very scary endeavor, which is, I think, why it's not that common that people pursue that path. But sometimes it is that focus, that desire, that long-term vision that leads to the great outcome. And for really, things that really move the needle, I think it can be worth kind of rolling the dice and really applying yourself to take that risk to come up with something that's really breakthrough.
Interesting. So maybe just a little bit further on that. So from what I understand, there was a technology to look at the digital signature of music and how you can create a database and then tap into that to do the matching. Do I have that right? Is that basically how that technology unfolded?
The Shazam technology, yeah. So that's correct. And there were existing technologies, as I mentioned, that could do that with the radio play. But it's really important to realize that it was a very rudimentary form of music recognition, those technologies, because they did rely on the music being a nice clean signal without background noises, and then also on a relatively small database of songs. I think there's about 100,000 songs played across all radio play, as opposed to the 100 million songs that are in Shazam's database today. And it was even always millions of songs in Shazam's database from launch. And then, so basically the predecessor technology didn't have to deal with either really the noise or the scale. And then also, of course, those technologies, in terms of scale, they only had to ping each radio station once every minute, whereas Shazam is having to ping the entire database every time someone Shazams a song. So you have multiple scale challenges. And so all of these challenges combined made our form of music recognition sort of many orders of magnitude more difficult to achieve than the existing form of music recognition that existed at the time, which is why no one had any idea how to do it, how to invent it. And so that's what we embarked on doing, is building a completely new approach to music recognition that would work and be robust in an environment where there's background noise, and also be highly scalable, so that you could search across a vast database of music every single time someone tried to Shazam a song.
Interesting. So how did you convince people that it might work, that it could work? That's got to be a story in and of itself. But maybe we can just take a couple of minutes and see how you did that, because it's almost like I've got an impossible idea that everyone's told me can never happen. How do we go forward?
Yeah. So it started off with my own conviction, and this is a bit interesting because obviously, well, I don't know, it's not obvious, but I'm non-technical by background. I'm really my education was really focused in business and economics and so on. But I grew up with parents who are scientists. My parents were both PhDs in physics. My dad is a nuclear physicist. So I sort of grew up in this world of sort of science, and so it kind of made me feel that you could do amazing things. That amazing things were technically possible, and I think that was part of the source of my own personal conviction. And then the other thing is, I kind of felt like, well, and this is really the concept of AI, which is that I kind of felt like, well, our human brain, we do it, right? We could stand somewhere, and if you know music really well and you know a song, and you're in a noisy bar where people are talking, our brain finds a way to hear that bit of music, and despite the noise, and if we know the song, we could identify it. So I kind of felt this sort of there was this. It just sort of set the stage that there's a possibility for technology to do it. It was really the thinking that if the human brain can do it, it seems that maybe we could come up with a way for computers to do it. It was that kind of foundational view that motivated me. And the people that we met as we embarked on trying to find someone to invent this, they're all highly qualified people. They're professors and PhDs in electrical engineering, specialized within audio signal processing for music and acoustics. And they were at amazing institutions like Stanford, where they have a group called the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics. MIT, where they have MIT Media Lab, UC Berkeley. We went to all these places. We even went to Xerox PARC, who had an audio signal an audio signal processing PhD expert. And we described the problem, but because, as I said, it wasn't possible at the time. No one had ever invented it. And when something hasn't been invented, it's not always clear how to invent it. And so the message we were getting back from everyone is, it's not possible, and I don't know how you could do that, right? Because of that noise and scale. As we embarked on this, we slowly started to hear certain names of some of the people that were really, global leaders in the most advanced development of technologies in audio signal processing. The trick was getting in the door and to get in front of those people. So there was one name that we heard at Stanford. He was actually the chairman of the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics. His name was Julius Smith, and his specialization is audio signal processing. But he had an incredible pedigree and background. He had invented the algorithms that are used in every Yamaha synthesizer, sort of in all the electronic keyboards. He had been the head of audio technologies, reporting directly to Steve Jobs at Next Computer, and he had been hired by the U.S. military to detect submarines under the water using just sound. And he sort of knew everyone, and many people had done their PhD sort of with him as their advisor. One problem is that we couldn't get in front of him. So I was trying to reach out to him, and I wasn't getting responses initially. Sometimes that's the art of your persistence, is how are you going to get in front of people, right? And so actually what we did is we found another professor at UC Berkeley who actually specialized in voice recognition, and he became an advisor to the company. He didn't know how to solve this either, but he was like happy to be an advisor. And then once he was an advisor, I then approached Julius again, because I kept hearing his name. And this time I could say, oh, and Dan Ellis from UC Berkeley is our advisor. And that sort of opened the door. He thought, oh, if Dan Ellis is an advisor, then maybe I'm willing to meet with you. So sometimes just the art can be opening the door, right? Creative ideas for opening the door. And so finally I met with Julius. We met with Julius. And what was great about Julius is, he's obviously incredibly accomplished and knowledgeable in this area, but he also had shared this foundational belief that I did, which is, yes, it's not possible. We don't know how to do it, but it does seem like it could be possible. Again, for this, that same analogy, the human brain does it. So, that's as with AI, it can be possible. It was his belief. So he didn't have a specific idea of how to implement it, but he just felt like maybe we can do it. So what we really needed is we needed a full-time person to tackle this, and he was certainly not available for that. He's already committed to many things, but he did help us choose the sort of most ideal candidate to join us as our fourth co-founder. And really try to invent this technology. We actually had compiled a list of about 30 names that we had found ourselves by searching the internet, all PhDs in electrical engineering, audio signal processing, who'd published papers in music and acoustics technologies out of places like Stanford, Berkeley, MIT, and other places. And we took that list of names and sat down with Julius in his living room in Palo Alto, California. And this was kind of really the first serious project we gave him as an advisor. We said, look, do you know these 30 names? He knew them all, because it's not a small, it's a small world in audio signal processing. And we said that, look, Julius, we need to pick one of these to be the fourth co-founder of Shazam. And we'd like you to help us rank the 5 smartest people on this list. I mean, the 5 most qualified, what he felt like would be the best candidates for someone that might have the chance to invent this. So not just smart, but sort of theoretical, sort of out of the box thinkers, and abstract thinkers, and so on. So we actually we made that list of the top 5, and that became our target list for, like, we're going to go out and we're going to try to convince one of these 5 people to join us in this startup, because we're going to rely on them to invent the technology that will then become Shazam. So the number 1 rank was Avery Wang. And we convinced Avery in a cafe, and also in Palo Alto, California, convinced him to join as the 4th co-founder to Shazam. Avery has 4 degrees from Stanford in electrical engineering, mathematics, even computational neuroscience, and so he joined.
Wow, that's an interesting story. So you're talking about the idea, the progression to, we can make a business out of this. We're trying to think more forwardly. And your persistence in going through those who can lead you down the pathway to get what you need technologically. That's amazing. So so I'm assuming he came on board, he got your technology, starting to prove that out. Is there anything in that process that you think would be interesting for us to talk about? Because now you're at the point where I've got the guy who can make it happen. Sometimes that's just a start, right? I mean, it's like, what happens next?
Absolutely. I mean, and the truth is that even after he worked on it for several months, so we now had a startup, and it was, we had our startup company, and there were 2 other co-founders that I had brought on board as co-founders as well. They're business sort of MBAs like myself. So there were 4 of us all together, 3 MBAs, and now Avery, the genius technologist. And we're working away at this, kind of building the business plan of how we're going to go to market, what the service will look like, and so on. And meanwhile, counting on Avery to invent this technology. And there were times, even he worked on it for several months, and he didn't know how to do it. He would meet with Julius, actually, and Julius was a consultant advisor and would help kind of brainstorm ideas. Avery works on it full time. But there were times he thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and tell Chris that this startup idea he has that we're all in on, it's not gonna work because I can't invent the technology. I just can't come up with a method. And he really was on the verge of giving up. And so part of the important kind of approach that we took is I thought a lot about how can I keep him motivated? How can I make sure he doesn't give up? Because I was worried that he was losing confidence that this was even possible. And so I remember having our first company barbecue, and that barbecue had about, I don't know, 5 or 6 people at it because there's not many people. We had our 4 co-founders. We had Julius and Dan Ellis, these 2 professors from Berkeley and Stanford, and that was our company basically. But we had a barbecue, and I remember arranging a little conversation in the corner where it was myself, Julius, and Avery talking, and I knew that Avery was really worried, or he was really, on the verge of giving up. And so I encouraged the conversation to go in the direction of Julius and I, saying that look, it's got to be possible. The human brain can do it. It's got to be possible, right? And I wanted Avery to hear from Julius that it's got to be possible, because Avery had done his entire PhD thesis under Julius. He was sort of really looked up to Julius, and I felt like if his own PhD advisor from Stanford says it has to be feasible, that should be incentive for him not to give up.
That's good motivation.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't give up, and finally, in the next month or two, he did crack the code and come up with a unique idea, a novel idea that we filed a patent on, and it was a three-dimensional graph of spectral peaks or energy peaks of sound, graphed both against time but also against frequencies. And then combinatorial hashing, which is a technique used to really reduce information and make searching very scalable and very fast, so that you could provide the service, at an affordable computational cost. So it was a real breakthrough, and so we filed the patent on that, and now we have the foundation for Shazam.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's shift a little bit if we can. I appreciate that. That's fascinating. Like you, I'm not technical, but I love the technical aspect of so many different things. But also kind of pivoting that into your business model. Help us out with what your initial thoughts were for your business model and how that progressed as we went, obviously, from text-based to apps, and then finally interacting directly with Apple.
Yeah,
kind of help us through that journey. It's a lot. It's probably a lot of information, but however you can help us think what you were, maybe what you thought about up front, because you had to fundraise against this idea long before you made the progress where you made further along.
Yeah, we sure did, and we had to raise. Our Series A, our first venture capital round, was $7.5 million, and that was $7.5 million in 2001. Dollars. So wow. It was a lot of money, and to get venture capitalists to take that risk, you certainly have to have a story around a business model as well. They're not going to just throw money at something that was just a fun, useful feature idea that doesn't have a business model. So what we did is we had our choices were limited at the beginning because there was no digital music market at the time. So the iPod and iTunes had not launched even. So people didn't buy digital songs. So there's no business model around selling digital music. There was really no advertising model at the time. And, by the time we were bought by Apple in 2018, advertising was our primary revenue stream. But there wasn't advertising really available at the time. I mean, our service, when we first launched, by the way, was a phone call followed by a text message, because again, there were no apps, and our launch was in the summer of 2002. So the way Shazam launched on those old phones is you dial the phone number, and then you held your phone in the air while our interactive voice response system, IVR, answered the phone and recorded 15 seconds of sound. And then we had your caller ID, so we immediately sent you a text message with the name of the song to your phone. That was how Shazam worked, and it was available to everyone with a mobile phone, and in our first market, the United Kingdom, upon launch. But wasn't
the initial name 2580? Was that the initial name of the company?
It wasn't the name. It was actually, our name was Shazam, but that was the phone number you dialed. Yeah, 2580-2580. So we secured. I mean, we could have used a normal phone number, right? Any regular phone number, but clearly, like, if you're a regular phone number, what's the chance someone's going to remember it, right? I mean, you'd really rely on them putting it into their address book on their phone. But 2580, if you look at a phone keypad, it's the 4 digits straight down the middle of the phone. It's the only 4 digits on a phone keypad that's actually in a straight line. And so we felt that would be a memorable way for people to remember the phone number for Shazam. So it's called Shazam, and then dial 2580. And by the way, I can't emphasize enough how difficult it was to get that 2580, because that's the only way you can get a 4-digit phone number is by doing a very custom partnership with the mobile phone company who controls that. And of course, there's more than one mobile phone company. In the United Kingdom, there's 4 major mobile phone companies. At the time, it was Vodafone, Orange, O2, and T-Mobile. So we had to secure that partnership with all 4 of them, and to make sure we had this consistent 4-digit phone number on the mobile phone. And by the way, they didn't they didn't offer 4-digit phone numbers to any third parties. There were no third parties that had a phone. Even United Airlines, 1-800-Flowers, Domino's Pizza, they didn't have a 4-digit phone number. And here we are, this little startup saying, you need to give us a 4-digit mobile phone number for voice calls. So that was a very big challenge to eliminate the friction in the Shazam experience. So I forgot where we're going from there.
All right. So I think the thought process is transitioning into from technology to fundraising and creating a business.
Yeah.
And
the business model
and progressing.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So basically, our business model was modeled because we were limited. We couldn't do the music sales. We couldn't do advertising, and it was just a text message at the time. There were no advertisements and text messages back then. And so our business model was actually modeled on a predecessor technology, you could argue, that phone companies offered, which was directory inquiries, 411. And you may recall that in those early days, if you wanted a phone number, if you wanted the phone number for Domino's Pizza, you could dial 411 and say, can I have the phone number for Domino's Pizza? An operator would give it to you. And then you were charged a premium charge for that on your phone bill, 50 cents, I think it was typically, for using directory inquiries. So we thought, wouldn't that be an interesting business model? So that actually was our business model. At the time, it was called premium SMS. That's how it worked. And so an SMS would hit your phone, but instead of just bringing the message, it would actually also bring a charge that would get on your phone bill. That's actually back in the day of ringtones. That's how people bought and paid for ringtones, is that the ringtone came to the phone and then premium SMS charged their phone and they paid for this ringtone. And so mobile operators had this capability. It was so nascent at the time that in the US, they didn't even have it rolled out yet. But where we were in Europe, based in the UK, they did have premium SMS rolled out, and they had it on all the major mobile operators. So that's how it works. Someone would make the phone call. The phone call is free, but if we successfully identified the song, we would send a premium SMS into your phone that would charge your phone 50 cents. And we'd share that with a mobile phone company. So they would sort of be split between us and the mobile phone company. And that was our model. And in our view, it was sort of frictionless because, wow, we could just charge the phone. You don't have to type in a credit card number or anything. It's just, you literally just dial this number and receive a text message that charges your mobile phone bill. And then we would get a share of that. So that was our business model upon launch. And we did have to evolve though over time. As you can imagine, that changed. Later, apps came out. And so of course we became an app. Shazam became an app, and it's actually at that point that we really took off. And then, of course, with iTunes, we integrated with iTunes, and we drove people to buy individual digital songs, 99 cents per song, and we became the biggest affiliate of iTunes. So we drove over $300 million a year of iTunes downloads to mobile phones, imagine. And we shared in that with companies like Apple and other MP3 sellers of music, Amazon, and so on. So we migrated from our business model being text message premium use to selling music. We also did have a premium model for a while on iPhone. There was a time when you actually had a paid version of the Shazam app. So initially at launch, you could use Shazam, the app. You could use the Shazam up to 5 times per month to identify songs, right? And that was it. You hit the limit at 5 times. And if you are someone who really loves music recognition, and there's always a share of people like that, and you wanted to use it more than 5 times per month, then we would send you in the direction of our premium app, which was a one-time $5 charge, and that would sort of hit your phone using the Apple, the App Store sort of payment mechanism. And for $5, people could buy this premium app where they had unlimited Shazams per month. Because of course the marginal cost per Shazam was very, very, very small.
Right.
So we had the premium. Then there's a day, and this just shows you just the unpredictability and flexibility you need with business models. Is that we had a competitor, and we were the market leader, but of course competition always eventually comes and copies technologies and launches their own services and so on. And then the competitor, who also had a 5 song per month cap, followed by you had to pay for the premium version, which, by the way, that model was working really well, driving in the millions of revenue for us per year. They released that and decided to go just free. And suddenly, if your competitor is offering something that you charge for free, well, you don't have a lot of choice. You basically
Right.
have to go free.
They
In
pretty
fact,
much drive
I
the
can
market at that point.
absolutely. I mean, this is where I see. I mean, if you think about the world we live in now with large language models, ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and all these things, right now they're all relying on the similar kind of model where you have a free version, but really the way they make money is get you to upgrade to the paid version, whether it's $20 a month or $200 a month or whatever. And I could see that world going away just like it did for us, right? We're suddenly, who knows, one of these companies, maybe a Gemini on Google, or maybe XAI with Elon Musk's company, just says, well, we're going to have the best version and it's going to be completely free. And maybe it's an advertising model then. And then there's not going to be a lot of choice. Who wants to pay $20 a month or even $200 a month for something that otherwise is free and ad-based? So it's amazing how the competitive environment and landscape can completely shift what your own choices on the business model, and you've really got to be thinking about how you can support new potential business models in the future, but by thinking about the scalability and your cost base and so on. And then we eventually started to invest heavily in, as we got to huge numbers of users, which we did as iPhone and Android penetration increased dramatically. We went from having just tens of thousands of users, hundreds of thousands of users, and then suddenly with the iPhone we got after a couple years into the millions of users, tens of millions of users, and then hundreds of millions of users. So, through over 300 million people using Shazam every month. When you get to that scale, you open up new possibilities, and the advertising model can actually be a significant opportunity. And, companies like Twitter and Facebook and so Snapchat and so on have built huge businesses out of advertising across these huge numbers of users, and Google. So we embarked on that, and we did build advertising as our primary business model. And we did some pretty innovative things where it wasn't just about putting ads in Shazam, but it was also about using Shazam as a tool to interact with ads. Right. So it sort of sounds non-obvious, but if you think about it, when you search Google, you see links, and then you also see some links that are ads. And so you might respond by clicking on one if there's one of interest to you. So you can engage with an ad when you're interested in it. But that didn't exist in TV and radio. If you see a TV ad, you can't engage with it. You just watch it, and that's it. There's nothing you can do.
Right.
But we actually partnered with advertisers to Shazam enable TV ads. So you could actually they would actually put the Shazam icon on the TV ad, even in Super Bowl ads, and then say Shazam this ad, and you could actually pull out your phone, launch Shazam, and Shazam the ad, and we would use the same kind of audio recognition technology, except instead of identifying a song, we're now identifying the recorded audio of a television advertisement, and then immediately take you into the app experience where you could then get more information about that advertiser. Look at if it was an ad for Jaguar cars, you could look at a 3-dimensional view of the car's interior right within the app, and things like that. Coca-Cola.
So you're able to take viewers and, using your app, drive them straight to the adverts website and get the experience of landing a customer right away, or at least a lead.
Yep, exactly. Website and even integrated experience in the Shazam app, so it was a big bet, and we achieved a unicorn valuation based on the big vision and promise around that opportunity. Frankly, in the end, it didn't completely work because otherwise you'd still see it as a mainstream experience today. We did launch plenty of television advertisements with partner with Shazam, and we did put it out there, but we never really solved the problem sufficiently that people could get to their phone in time, and it wasn't already a known. So I think that was one problem, is the speed of having to get, an ad is only 30 seconds long. So if there's a call to action on the ad, to Shazam the ad, and then you have to get out your phone, launch Shazam, and Shazam the ad all in under 30 seconds, that was a challenge. And then I think also, if you think about it, do people really want engage with an advertisement. I mean, I think I think even when people click on ads on Google and Facebook, it's not that they're looking to engage with an advertisement. It's more that they just see something relevant to them, and it doesn't feel that different than the organic results. Whereas this is like you're actually saying to the person, literally like, please engage with an advertisement. And that's not really why people use Shazam. People use services. They're not looking to engage with advertisements. They're looking to identify songs and so on. So the model it was not really meant to happen. I think it really had big challenges to succeed. So certainly big bets. I mean, remember, we raised $140 million in venture capital over the years at Shazam. And the bulk of that was for trying these types of things to really at scale find a new business model.
Well, that's interesting because you started with the text model, with the app. You mentioned sharing with Apple on the iTunes downloads, and then the adverts both on the app and what you just described. So tell us a little more about the Apple connection, because I think people are interested there. It sounds like when the app launched on iPhone and iOS that you made that connection with Apple and ultimately led to them acquiring the company. Can you walk us through a little bit of that process and maybe that pathway for the company and how that unfolded?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I'd say that, in any strategic acquisition, and so Apple acquired Shazam in 2018, I think often the best inroads are to have a close relationship, sort of a symbiotic relationship with the company, so they get to know each other and understand the value. And we had from very early on, we had an amazing relationship with Apple. So in the early days of the iPhone, to give you some examples, so when the iPhone App Store first launched, so imagine the very first iPhone App Store, which was in 2008. So that's exactly 1 year after the first iPhone launched. The first iPhone launched in 2007, but for the entire first year, there was no App Store. It was just sort of their Apple apps on the phone. And then 1 year later, they launched the App Store. And when they launched the App Store, they were very set on it being a success. So they hand-selected, curated the first 500 apps that would be part of the App Store. So imagine when the App Store launched, there were literally just 500 apps available, and Shazam was one of them. So we were selected to be a showcase app for the very original App Store. And then actually we'll call it a year later or so, I don't know exactly, the number of apps grew very dramatically, into the thousands and tens of thousands and so on. And Apple, noticed that, Shazam was one of the most popular apps. In fact, a year after the App Store launched, they announced who the most popular apps were. And there was Google, Facebook, Skype, and Shazam was the fourth most popular app of all apps in the App Store. And so they actually ran, of course, in those days, the iPhone was a relatively new product. So the total number of people with iPhones was sort of like 1 million, or in the whole world, or 2 million, pretty small numbers in those early days. And so they actually Apple made some television commercials that they ran on a national level that would demonstrate reasons to buy an iPhone. And sometimes they would feature apps as the primary focus of this advertisement. They did this for about 5 or 6 apps, and Shazam was one of them. So about 6 apps where they literally created a dedicated television commercial, a 30-second commercial that really just showed what Shazam was, and the commercial ended by saying, another reason to use the iPhone, basically. Right. Solving problems every day, or I forgot what their tagline was. But anyway, so we had this, I mean, what a dream come true for a startup company. We had these sort of national advertising campaign showing Shazam, of course, but really this was an Apple project, right? Apple funded, and it was all about selling iPhones. But it was great for driving even more awareness for our app, which was already very popular. So yeah, gosh, now again, I lost train of thought. Where are we going on this?
No, you're talking about the natural connection with iOS and Apple.
Apple. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that you can see a couple natural connections. Now, again, they had iTunes, which clearly, as you may remember, when the iPhone was launched, it was they basically presented it as being 3 things in one. I don't know if you remember this at the announcement, but They said it's a phone, It's an iPod, and again, iPod was a very mainstream device back then. It was very successful. It's a phone, it's an iPod, and it's an internet browser. So that's how Steve Jobs presented the launch of the iPhone: a phone, an iPod, and an internet browser. Now, notice that one of those is iPod, which is a music player. So essentially, this brand new device is being marketed to the world as being three things, and one of them is music. And so, how complementary would be music recognition to it when one of the three things that your main proposition about is music. And so we worked closely with Apple and integrated our music recognition into their iTunes, because iTunes, of course, is connected to iPods and therefore the iPhone. It's the way that people bought digital music. Back in the days before Spotify, Apple actually dominated digital music. It had about 90% market share of all digital music on iTunes. And so we partnered closely with them. We led to a lot of music downloads, as I mentioned, over $300 million of music downloads a year. So we had partnered with them as one of the first 500 apps at the App Store, the number one affiliate of iTunes downloads. And then over the years, because we're a popular app, we're always there partnering with Apple to showcase their latest and greatest stuff with each platform release of iOS. And so, always building into the latest features of iOS and enabling, and showcasing the latest technologies. We also partnered with them to power Siri. So of course, when they launched Siri, one of the features they wanted is, what's this song? And so we powered that. That was powered by Shazam. If you said, what's this song? It would Shazam. Yeah, it would Shazam and tell you the name of the song. And the result was a Siri result. At the bottom, it said sort of powered by Shazam. So we had many things that we did with Apple over the years. And then finally, the world kind of moved to streaming. And obviously Spotify was the disruptor in that. And we did partner with Spotify as well. And that was I always like to think that was the most symbiotic existence between Shazam and the consumption of music, because now you identify a song. Not only can you get access to it, right? Because before you could download it on iTunes, and that was very successful. But now you actually get access to it, and you don't even have to pay an incremental amount of money, 99 cents a song, because you stream music. And as you know, streaming is an all-you-can-eat package, $10 a month, and you stream as much as you want. So when you're on a Spotify or Apple Music streaming service, you basically, any song you Shazam, you kind of now own it, basically, because you already pay for unlimited music. And so the real problem in the world of streaming was less about selling music, and it was more about finding the music you want to listen to, or discovery. And in the world of discovery, there's many ways you help your users discover music, just kind of like Netflix, tells you to watch these shows. Well, both Spotify and Apple Music had discovery playlists. Here, we think you should listen to these songs based on your music taste. But Shazam is a primary form of discovery, because I always think that Shazam is all about discovering music in the real world where you hear it, right? So, wherever you hear a song, you can discover it with Shazam, and then you could add it seamlessly into a playlist on Spotify or Apple Music, and that ultimately became the fundamental reason I believe why Apple bought Shazam, because it was just so complementary to streaming. And Apple was playing catch up in streaming. Spotify was the market leader, and now Apple is playing catch up with Apple Music. But Shazam, it just complements streaming so much, and also as a funnel for users. There's many people who don't use streaming, and it's obviously clearly a great funnel for music lovers into streaming services such as Apple Music.
Interesting. So, and now they own that technology, and that's a fascinating story. We've got just.
I'll just add one thing, and not just the technology. Sure. So this is also, if you look at almost every Apple acquisition, and there's some big ones. I think Shazam is about the 6th largest, but almost every Apple acquisition was acquisition of technologies, so you can do fingerprint recognition, eye recognition on the phone, and so on. But the Shazam acquisition was an acquisition not just of a technology, but of a product and a brand. So they retain the Shazam brand. The only other brand I know that they've ever bought and retained is Beats. Because the Beats brand for headphones, but other than that, it's pretty much none. And so, they retained the Shazam brand and the product, which has been great.
Well, that speaks to recognition, because going from your comment of being the top 5 apps when initially loaded to the power of Shazam, I've still got it right on my first page, and use it for music recognition. So, Chris, we got just a few more minutes. Just a couple of quick thoughts. Wondering your journey this journey you've taken with Shazam and the technology, and as you look at things today, how has that shaped what you're thinking about now as you go forward, and maybe even the power of AI and other applications?
Yeah, I mean, well, Shazam is it actually has earned its mark in history on AI. It's the first AI in history that became a mass consumer product, and so that was exciting. Back then, AI was a very different model. It was pattern recognition, and today we've moved on to machine learning and then neural network processing, and so AI is really advancing at an incredible rate. And I think the things that we can do with AI is just so exciting for me today. And so one of the projects that I have in leveraging AI is a project I call Guard. It's early stage, seed stage startup that's really bootstrapped at this point. And it's to prevent drowning so computer vision is just AI applied to vision, to cameras, like self-driving cars. So it's computer vision AI, except that on a device in a swimming pool. So it will be underwater and always watching to identify drowning and alert people if someone's drowning. Luckily, I don't know anyone who drowned, but I've always been concerned when my son was around a pool, and I just think that would be a great problem to solve, even though it's not a giant market, but is a meaningful way you could save lives. So that's an example of the kind of things I like to be involved in going forward.
Interesting. Well, yeah, we'll look forward to tracking that progression and seeing how that goes. I love the application of technology, solving problems, and that's actually probably bigger than you think, given the number of pools and safety and whatnot. So interesting to see. Well, Chris, we have absolutely enjoyed having you with us. Any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to share? I know you've taken us on quite a journey in terms of Shazam and your involvement and how you've built it into something interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, mainly just that, look, AI is changing the world, as we all know. And so I actually think that, the main strategic advantage for everyone these days is staying as up to date as you can and ahead of the game on how can we bring AI into our own businesses and our own world and stay on the leading edge of how we can leverage AI to embrace the future.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you for being with us, and everyone who's watching, we appreciate you joining in. Chris Barton has been a very inspirational and fabulous speaker. If you want to follow Chris on LinkedIn or to his website at chrisjbarton.com, it'll be interesting to track and follow and see how things unfold. Thanks, everybody, and I think that'll do it for this episode.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Joe.
All right, thanks, Chris.